What the f? Is that for real?
Under the blinding lights of a packed arena, one man stands alone. His face stoic, his hand raised high, as 50,000 voices roar, half cheering, half booing. "Let's go, Cena!" Cena sucks. John Cena smiles, not because he loves the noise, but because he's learned to live inside it. For years, he was the golden boy of wrestling, the face of WWE, the hero who never quit. But fame has a strange way of turning applause into resentment. The same crowd that once adored him began to mock him, question him, hate him. And yet, no matter how loud the boos got, Cena never stepped back. Behind the slogans, behind the perfect smile, was a man who knew what rejection felt like. A kid from Massachusetts who had been laughed at, overlooked, and told he wasn't enough. This is not the story of a champion who won easily. It's the story of a man who fought for respect, even when the world refused to give it. Transition, childhood and family. Before the lights, the fame and the roaring crowds, there was silence. The quiet town of West Newbury, Massachusetts. A place where winters were long, dreams were small, and strength was earned the hard way. John Felix Anthony Cena was born in 1977, the second of 5 brothers in a lively, chaotic household. His father, John Cena Sr., was a local wrestling announcer, passionate, loud, and larger than life. His mother, Carol, was the heart that held the family together. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and competition was their daily language. At school, young John wasn't the powerhouse the world would later see. He was small, skinny, and often picked on. He remembers the laughter, the shoves, the sting of being told, "You'll never be strong enough." And maybe that's when something shifted inside him. A quiet promise that pain would never define him again. By 12, he begged his father for a weight set. In the cold basement of their New England home, he began lifting rusty iron bars, not to impress anyone, but to build armor. Every rep was a reply to the voices that doubted him. He studied discipline like scripture. While others partied, John was training, shaping muscle, willpower, and an unbreakable mindset. He wasn't chasing fame yet. He was chasing respect, because before John Cena became a superstar, he was a boy trying to prove one simple truth: that strength doesn't come from size. It comes from the refusal to give up. Transition, early career, and first break. At 22, John Cena packed his entire life into a beat-up 1991 Lincoln Continental and drove across the country, from the quiet suburbs of Massachusetts to the golden haze of California. He had $500 in his pocket, no plan, and one relentless belief: he could make it. Los Angeles wasn't kind to dreamers. Cena worked folding towels and cleaning toilets at Gold's Gym just to keep the lights on. At night, he slept in his car, air thick with the smell of sweat and hope. But every dawn, he trained like a man possessed. The dream wasn't fame. It was to become someone worth respecting. Then a small door cracked open. A friend suggested he try a local wrestling school, Ultimate Pro Wrestling. It wasn't glamorous. Dim lights, squeaky ropes, a crowd of a few dozen. But in that ring, under the echo of each slam, Cena found his voice. He created a character called the Prototype. Half man, half machine. A persona built from the same iron discipline that once filled his basement gym. He wasn't the fastest or flashiest, but there was something raw, something real in his eyes. A refusal to quit, no matter how many times he got slammed to the mat. In 2000, WWE noticed. Cena signed a developmental deal and stepped onto the biggest stage in sports entertainment. But his debut was a disaster. Crowds didn't care. His story seemed over before it began. Still, Cena stayed late after every show, studying, listening, waiting. And one night, when a live mic was handed to him, he did something no one expected. He rapped. And that freestyle would change everything. Transition, rise to fame. The freestyle was never planned. Just a moment of instinct, a heartbeat of truth. But when John Cena grabbed that microphone and unleashed a storm of rhymes, everything changed. The crowd roared. The locker room took notice. And WWE had found something new. A voice that sounded different, real, unpredictable. He became the doctor of thugonomics. Baseball cap, chain around his neck, confidence louder than the crowd itself. In a world of scripted heroes, Cena was raw, funny, fearless. Fans either loved him or loved to hate him. And that, paradoxically, made him a phenomenon. By 2005, he was champion. By 2007, he was the face of the entire company. His catchphrase, "Never give up," was printed on millions of shirts, waving through arenas like a gospel. He faced giants like The Rock, Triple H, Randy Orton, and each match pushed him closer to legend. But the higher he climbed, the louder the divide grew. Some saw him as the embodiment of hard work and positivity. Others saw him as corporate perfection. Too clean, too safe, too heroic to be real. The boos grew as deafening as the cheers, and Cena, the man who once lifted weights to silence bullies, now faced millions of voices trying to tear him down. Still he smiled. He kept showing up, night after night, battered, bleeding, but unbroken. Because for John Cena, respect was never about popularity. It was about perseverance. Behind the cameras, he trained harder than anyone, arrived first, left last, studied every move. And while others burned out chasing applause, Cena found strength in endurance. He was no longer the kid lifting rusty weights in a basement. He was the man carrying the entire weight of the industry. And somehow, he never let it crush him. Transition. The fall and scandals. At the height of his fame, John Cena was everywhere. Main events, magazine covers, talk shows, charity galas. He was the unbreakable face of WWE, the hero who never quit. But behind that smile, the armor was cracking. Years of physical punishment had taken their toll. Shoulder tears, neck injuries, surgeries. His body was a map of scars. He returned to the ring months before doctors advised, terrified of being replaced. Every time he walked through the curtain, he carried not just pain, but expectation. The crowd that once lifted him now booed louder than ever. And in the noise, something personal began to fall apart. Cena's marriage collapsed under the weight of his schedule and perfectionism. He was married to the business, not to the woman waiting at home. In 2012, the divorce became public, followed by a turbulent on-again, off-again relationship with fellow wrestler Nikki Bella. For the first time, fans questioned his sincerity. Was he the humble role model, or a man hiding behind slogans? The media pounced. Tabloids painted him as cold, calculating, even fake. Every word, every gesture was dissected. And for a man who built his career on integrity, that cut deeper than any injury. John Cena, the symbol of never give up, suddenly found himself lost, not in defeat, but in doubt. He didn't know who he was when the lights turned off. The cheers, the boos, the fame, none of it could drown out the question echoing in his own mind. What's left of me? When the image is gone? That question would break some men. For Cena, it became the start of something else. The road back to himself. Transition, reinvention, and redemption. When everything seemed to unravel, John Cena did something most people never expected. He stepped away from the ring, the spotlight, the roar. Not to quit, but to rediscover the man beneath the myth. Hollywood wasn't waiting with open arms. To many, Cena was just another wrestler trying to act. But he walked onto every set with the same discipline he carried into the ring. Early roles in the Marine and 12 rounds drew little praise, yet he kept showing up, humble, learning, improving. Then came Trainwreck in 2015, a comedic role that flipped everything people thought they knew about him. Funny, self-aware, fearless. It wasn't John Cena the superhero, it was John Cena the human being. That role opened the door to Blockers, Bumblebee, Fast and Furious 9, and finally, Peacemaker. A broken, hilarious, deeply flawed hero that mirrored the man himself. Through acting, Cena found something he'd never been allowed to explore: vulnerability. No titles, no belts, no slogans, just emotion. Raw, real, unfiltered. Off-screen, he began working more quietly, visiting hospitals without cameras, donating millions to charities, and granting wishes through Make-A-Wish. Not for attention, but because it felt right. He no longer needed the crowd's validation. He had finally learned the difference between fame and respect. And when he returned to WWE, it wasn't as the doctor of thugonomics, nor the perfect corporate hero, but as a man who had fallen, rebuilt himself, and stood taller for it. John Cena wasn't reinventing his image. He was rediscovering his truth. Transition, legacy, and influence. In a world obsessed with noise, John Cena's legacy speaks in silence, not through controversies or scandals, but through consistency, endurance, and heart. Over 2 decades in WWE, he became one of the most decorated superstars in history, 16-time world champion, record-breaking attendance headliner, and the face of a generation. But his influence extends far beyond titles. Cena redefined what it means to be a hero. He showed that strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising every single time you do. That kindness and toughness can live in the same body. That humility can coexist with greatness. His mantra, "Never give up," went beyond the ring, becoming a lifeline for kids fighting illness, people rebuilding after loss, and anyone who's ever been told they weren't enough. Through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, Cena granted over 650 wishes, more than any celebrity in history. He never missed one. No cameras, no headlines, just a man kneeling beside a child, reminding them they mattered. Peers who once mocked him now call him a role model. Critics who doubted him now call him a legend. Even the boos, once thunderous, have softened into something else. Respect. John Cena's greatest legacy isn't the championships he won. It's the millions of lives he quietly lifted, and the idea that the truest kind of power is the ability to inspire others to believe again. Transition, personal growth and reflection. Fame used to define John Cena. Now it merely follows him. After years of chasing perfection, he learned to embrace imperfection, to see strength not in control, but in acceptance. He once said, "Be loyal to those who support you, and humble with those who don't." That line isn't a quote anymore. It's his way of living. Today, Cena's mornings are quieter. He reads philosophy, meditates, trains not to compete, but to stay grounded. He speaks about gratitude, how peace isn't found in applause, but in purpose. He's no longer trying to prove he's the best. He's trying to be better, kinder, wiser, more present. His love life, once public chaos, has settled into quiet companionship. His world now is filled with laughter, cooking, helping others, and silence. The kind of silence that once haunted him, but now feels like home. He understands that legacy isn't a moment on TV. It's the ripple effect of how you treat people when no one's watching. The man who once built walls of muscle now builds bridges of empathy. The fighter who once demanded respect now earns it without saying a word. John Cena has become something rarer than famous. He's become peaceful. And that peace didn't come from winning battles, but from finally learning when to stop fighting. Transition, conclusion, final message. The arena lights dim once more. A familiar chant echoes through the air. Part cheer, part jeer. But this time, John Cena doesn't hear the difference. He walks toward the ring, older, calmer, carrying not a title belt, but the quiet weight of everything he's learned. Every scar, every heartbreak, every fall. All of it led him here. He raises his hand, not in victory, but in gratitude. Because respect isn't something you win, it's something you live. The boy who once lifted rusty weights in a cold basement became the man who lifted others when they couldn't stand. The performer who was booed for being too perfect proved that real strength isn't in perfection, it's in persistence. As the crowd roars, Cena smiles. Not the smile of a superstar, but of a man who's finally made peace with himself. Because when the lights fade, when the noise disappears, what remains isn't the fame. It's the legacy of a man who never gave up. Not on his dreams, not on his values, and not on the belief that respect, once earned, lasts forever. Never give up. Not a slogan. A life.